Very much for joining the webinar on STEM the Flow this afternoon. My name is Joe. I'm the Education and Learning Officer for Upstream Battle, and the one that may have been sending you various reminder emails about the session today. So thank you, as I say, for joining to hear all about the exciting new challenge, which is STEM the Flow. So what we're going to be covering today is just a little bit about what the challenge is, how you might get started going forward from here, the timescale and the planning aspect for the participants, the workshops, partners and mentor aspect of the challenge, how to then think about your report displaying a model in time for an exhibition at the end of the challenge. And as I say, there'll be a bit of opportunity right at the end for some Q&A. If we don't have time to cover all the questions, or you think of something after the session, that's absolutely fine. Please feel free to give me an email or drop your questions into the chat. And obviously the chat will be recorded, so I'll get back to you with any questions that we don't have time for. So just a little bit about the challenge STEM the Flow. The project is part of the Upstream Battle Education Programme, which aims to reduce source to sea litter in and around the River Clyde. So you may well have known other aspects of the Upstream Battle Programme. It involves communities, businesses, and of course schools and education establishments. Now, source of sea litter and marine plastic in particular is a very topical subject in relation to our environment, and one that's very much in the public eye. It's unknown that 12.7 million tonnes of plastic enters the marine environment every year, which is actually the equivalent of a rubbish truck of litter every single minute. So STEM the Flow is a great opportunity for young people to engage with the issue. The challenge itself is to design a solution to prevent source to sea litter in and around the Clyde. So it's really important that we're keeping it Clyde based, because we're thinking about pathways of source to sea litter. So how the litter can get from land, for example, in the school playground, and how it can end up in the marine environment. So the task is for the participants to come up with a way of either collecting the litter that is already in the Clyde or preventing it getting there in the first place. And I'm sure you may already have some ideas, and your participants and your teams might already have an idea of how this could be achieved. And there are lots of different ways for it, which is really the basis for the challenge. So the STEM the Flow challenge is an opportunity for participants to investigate and explore source to sea litter topic in essence, really, and it's to come up with their own way of tackling it. So it's to support pupils to look into opportunities such as STEM careers and developing a young workforce, which they may not have already. And it's a really good opportunity to work closely with an industry professional who are also going to be who are also STEM ambassadors, and they can support the project from the start all the way to the end. So the project is aimed at P6 to S3 pupils, which is why it's closely aligned to the careers objective and making younger ages aware of STEM and DYW as a career pathway. That was a decision that was made to bring it into that age group, and I can explain that shortly afterwards. Now, a few questions have come up already about sort of like what can be the teams and who can make up the teams. Well, you're very welcome to enter multiple teams from your establishment. However, we ask that it's only one team per year group, and this is simply to manage the numbers for assigning the mentors. Of course, if we had hundreds of young people taking part, the mentor aspect, they wouldn't be able to support the young people in as well, and therefore we're asking, as I say, it's just one team per year group for that. You can also have different teams made up from different year groups for example, a eco club or a science club, and that's why this is a challenge that's really focused towards those kind of clubs and those kinds of groups. If you have a STEM or an eco club, for example, or an eco committee, this is a fantastic long-term project for them to get involved in. We ask that a member of teaching staff supports the team during the project, for example, by liaising with the industry partner on any questions the participants have, or by setting up the calls throughout the project. Again, that's just to try and manage that direct contact with the mentors so that we can manage the time effectively. You may have already had a look at the guidance booklet. This is aimed at the participants themselves, which is why the language is kind of like your project, etc. And this is a resource that will guide them through the project. I've just seen that there's been a quick question pop up in the chat. So Mr. Dale asked, could you submit multiple mixed teams, or are they consisted of pupils from a range of year groups? So that's a good question. If they are a mix of teams, for example, you've got 12 young people in a STEM club, that could be 2 teams, yes. So how to get started? Well, something that's really important for the participants and maybe for the supporting teacher themselves is to start by gaining some background knowledge of the issue of source of sea litter and marine litter. This could be using the EcoSchool evidence or existing work that you're doing in the schools. But the idea is to really investigate it and go out and investigate the issue further. So you could focus on what the issues are in your local area, or look at connections with other establishments in your learning community or cluster, and that would give you a broader picture of the issue of source of sea litter to start with. We do have resources on the Upstream Battle website and also in the EcoSchool section of our website, which is now under Climate Action Schools, and that will give you some ideas of how you can address this topic with the teams, and maybe go out and do a litter survey using the resources that we've got there. The challenge timescale is very much up to you and your lesson schedule and who the participants and the teams are. But it's suggested that it could take up to about 9 weeks, which is why the time slot is as it is, and that allows you to spread work out for participants, fitting in with their, as I say, their timetable and your schedule as well. But the main date for the diary is that the submission deadline for the final materials is the 10th of February, which is 1 week before the exhibition, and I'll talk a wee bit about what the material that submission it looks like later on. But there are also multiple ways in which the teams can manage their project. So, for example, on the screen here is an example of a Gantt chart, which is very much an engineering and project management tool. But also there's any other sort of project planner or project tracker. It's really up to their own teams of how they create that and how they manage their time, and that's really an important part of the project itself anyway. So the first workshop will be in October, and I'll come on to workshops very shortly, and that will include information on guidance on how to produce a project plan and why project planning is important. So that will fit in nicely with that section. So the workshops aim to provide participating teams with a background in the topics relating to the challenge. So there'll be 4 online workshops throughout the challenge, and they'll fit in different parts of where they should be in completing the challenge. So they will be held online and from 1:30 to 2:30. I've tried my very best to make sure that this fits in with as many as possible. So I do apologise that it might sit in, obviously, in period time, and it might also sit in lunchtime. But that is a time which should be suitable for as many as possible for you to get involved. So the information on the workshops, join-in link, and a list of any resources that are required will be sent out in advance of the workshop as well. So the dates and the topics for the workshops are just on the slide just there. The first workshop on the 26th of October will be held via WebEx, which is just another sort of that online meeting tool. That's because the workshop leaders can't use Teams for security reasons. I'll let you guess which one of the our 3 partners is going to be running that if it's security reasons. So if you are able to ensure that you have access to WebEx in your establishment, it's actually owned by Skype. So if you've got access to Teams or to Skype or to Zoom, it's just another online system. If you would like some more information on that, then please do let me know and I can forward that on. Very good question from Mr. Welsh there, that all the workshops will be recorded. I was just about to come on to it because the teams are encouraged to participate in feedback and interaction with the workshop leader. So as a result, it's not going to be possible to record the whole workshop. So instead, the first half of the workshop will be more of a presentation and a discussion using reactions and the chat, where cameras will be switched off. And then the second half of the workshop will include an interactive activity where participating teams are encouraged to have their cameras on so that you can interact with the workshop leader and they can see what they're doing. So, excuse me, the workshops will be recorded. However, it will just be the presentation half, not the activity, which will be available to view back. So we are very fortunate to be supported by a range of industry partners for STEM the Flow. As well as being experts in their fields of engineering, they all support the wider Upstream Battle campaign to reduce source-to-sea litter on the Clyde. So they are passionate about the topic as well. So those partners are BAE Systems, Scottish Water and Jacobs Engineering. So our industry partners will also support participants by offering professional advice throughout the challenge. So teams have the opportunity to work with an industry expert who will be able to answer questions from participants and offer advice at different stages of the project. Excuse me. Now, as I said earlier, due to the number of teams which have registered an interest, which is fantastic, so thank you so much for all of you who have come today, it does mean that it will be likely that each mentor will have more than one team. So how much they'll be involved will really depend on the workload of and how many teams they've got with them. Excuse me. Mentors will be allocated to teams at the start of November, so please make sure that you have confirmed if you will be taking part after this webinar, and then we can start to allocate mentors from there. This might be via geographical region, or it might be just at random, excuse me. So the mentors have volunteered their time to STEM the Flow on top of their day jobs, and therefore the amount of engagement with the teams might be variable. However, it's planned that mentors have one meeting, such as a video call, with their teams once a month during the project. So as a minimum, it's going to be once a month. The meetings must be coordinated and attended by a member of staff. So if there is a member of staff that is coordinating the project, or even if they're not able to attend, obviously those video calls must be attended by a member of school staff as well. Any further engagement, more so than the video calls, such as additional meetings or email correspondence, as I say, is subject to their workload, but our mentors are, as I say, they're STEM ambassadors. They're really passionate about the subject, really passionate about the challenge. So they are there to offer support and help the participants. So the participants are asked to produce 3 things for the conclusion of their project, which is a report, a display, and a model. So the report can take any variety of mediums that work well with your the participants, with your teams. So it could be a written, it could be a video, or it could be sort of a an online whiteboard. And that needs to be submitted 1 week before the challenge deadline. There'll also be a short form which is specifically for the supporting member of staff, which is more of an evaluation and more information that we can use out with the display for on the website and for news stories, etc. So the idea of the display and presentation is for that to feed into the exhibition event. So the presentation and the display will be used by the judges and also challenge representatives in some awards that will be taking place. But you can use any information from the project report. So we're trying to limit how much they're having to reproduce or how much they're needing to produce. So anything that's gone into the project report can hopefully just be transferred into a display or into a presentation for that event. We also ask that they build a model. You know, it is an engineering challenge. It'd be fantastic if we see some really great models. Again, they can be in whatever way that your participants are able to present their model. It could be anything from some newspaper and some PVA all the way up to 3D printing and CAD software if you have that in your establishment. It would be really good to have that model at the exhibition, as it's a really good visual representation of what their final solution is, really. Guidance on the process for designing and prototyping and building is all in that document. It's encouraged that, you know, the teams, the experiment with what they're doing, you know, it's all about that process of the challenge. So if there isn't a final model at the showcase, you know, just a concept or a prototype is just as good. So finally, the exhibition, we're delighted to be hosted by the Riverside Museum once again on the banks of the Clyde. It's a fabulous place to showcase all of the work of the participants. It will be in February, a week commencing 20th of February. It's looking most likely to be the 22nd of February, which is a Wednesday, and it will be in school time from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. The event itself will take place throughout the morning with representatives from industry partners and Keep Scotland Beautiful employees, and there'll be a photographer and videographer present as well. So all the information about the exhibition will be sent out well in advance, including media, consent forms, etc. Awards will be presented for different categories, such as Best Overall Project or Most Sustainable Design. And after the event in the morning, there'll be an opportunity for attendees to have a look around the museum. The Riverside have been very supportive and saying that there's an opportunity to do a learning tour of all of the exhibitions as part of the day. So it really will be a day out, as well as just the showcase and award ceremony. I'm going to that is the end of the presentation. I tried to keep it quite short in enough time for question and answers. So I'm just going to finish off with a short video, which hopefully should work, which might be a nice bit of inspiration from the for the challenge and from the event that was held in 2019 at the Riverside Museum. And as I say, that is it from me for the presentation. So thank you very much again for taking the time to join the webinar. And as I say, there's an opportunity now for any further questions that you might have, or maybe to have a look at some of the list of names that you may recognise to see if anybody wants to partner up to investigate the local area and do a litter survey. But other than that, I'd like to say a big thank you for joining me this afternoon on the webinar.
That's great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Right, so I've got a couple of questions coming through now. Mr. Donnelly says, how much teacher involvement is there with the pupils? So do the pupils take the lead? Absolutely. The challenge is very much pupil-led, and the involvement of the teachers is really there just to manage the liaison with mentors and to ensure health and safety if you go into investigate an area off-site, etc. It's for those things, whereas the challenge itself is very much pupil-led in terms of the ideas, the solutions, and investigating the problem in the area. Oh, I've just seen that a quick question from earlier on asking if the slides will be available. Yes, the slides will be available. I will put them, I'll send them out to everybody who has attended this webinar, and I'll also put them on the STEM the Flow webpage, which is where you will have registered that short form to register your interest, and it will sit on there as well. A question from Mrs. Goldie. How would you like to know if we're taking part? I will send as part of the email with the slides, there'll be a Microsoft Forms form just to capture some further details about number of participants and whether you're taking part or not. So thank you for that. Ms. Dale asked, when is the cutoff for submitting confirmation of teams? I do realise we are about to go on the October break, so I apologise again. I tried my best to make sure that the information session was just before the October break. But as I say, I'll be following up the webinar with an email tomorrow for you to complete there for your number of teams or participants that are taking part. So it's just before the start of November where we're looking to allocate mentors. So anytime before that will be absolutely fine. But there is flexibility in there, of course. Mr. Donnelly's got the right idea, asking if anyone wants to go on a field trip. So that's absolutely the right idea.
Joe, sorry, I'm not sure if you saw this question or not. It's very noisy in my house, so apologies if you've already answered this. Mr. Buchan asking he was going to do it with a class of 23 P7s. Is it my understanding that even if I divided them into teams, this would be too many from one stage, is the question.
Oh, that one is a good one, and it's an unfortunate answer, I'm afraid, because yes, as I say, if we do have whole stages, whole year groups taking part, it will mean that there'll be too many. My only suggestion would be that you take part as a class, but there's a select sort of representatives from the class that form the team. I do appreciate that that's a hard one, so I do apologise. But as I say, if there were representatives from the team, representatives from the year group that form the team, then the whole class could watch back the webinar and so the workshops, and that would probably be my best suggestion for that. As well as asked if there's a maximum number. Yes, so we're saying there should be 6 participants per team, please. 6 participants per team.